Well, hello, and thank you for joining us here today. I'm Patrick Clore, Head of Customer Insights at GiveSmart by Community Brands, and want to welcome all of you fearless fundraisers joining us today. Today is the 6th episode in our Outside the Room Fundraising Success Series that we're doing in the hopes that it can continue to inspire each other in the art of the possible. Now, when it comes to fundraising and development, baseball seems like an appropriate analogy as nobody ever bats 1,000. And in that same vein, and knowing we're in the dog days of summer, we hope you brought your peanuts and Cracker Jacks with you today as we are joined by the marvelous Chloe Menese of the Chicago Cubs Charities to share their story. Chloe, thank you so much for being here with us today.
You are so welcome. I'm really happy to be here too amongst all the fundraising individuals, and I'm excited to talk about what we can do together and kind of share some knowledge that I have in hopes that, you know, we can retain and inspire our communities to continue to secure our important funding.
Well, it's going to be fun. And also joining with us here today is Brett Dickerson, our Senior Customer Success Manager, and Brandon Steck, Director of Marketing, both deeply experienced fundraisers in their own rights. B squared, Brett and Brandon, thank you both for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
That's the best nickname I've had all year.
We're trying to get better each week. To start stuff off today with a little bit of process and procedure here. In the chat, we're going to drop in some resources that we wanted to share. And similar to what Chloe just said, no matter where you may be in your fundraising journey, we want to provide resources such as the ones we're sharing, as well as this conversation, with the hopes that it can help accelerate your impact as you look at the year to come and further the specific causes that each of you have. And so to get things started off, we're going to put up a poll that we've been doing week over week just to kind of track how do you feel. So as it stands today, Thursday, July 16th, how confident are you you'll reach your fundraising goals? Not so hot. We're making some strides. We're going to hit it, or we may even surpass it. And Chloe, while folks are weighing in here on the poll, at a high level, could you share with us your mission and what the Cubs Charities does?
Yeah, absolutely. So the root of Cubs Charities' mission is sports-based youth development. We aim to expand quality baseball and softball opportunities to all Chicago children and youth by engaging them with skilled coaches, quality programming, and providing safe and accessible places for them to play the game. We seek to engage all those groups from kindergarten through college, driving meaningful change through sport, education, and health. And so on the other side of that coin, in our uniqueness, is the support we give to our players and baseball operations staff to pursue it and elevate any of the other causes that they want to impact.
That is fantastic. And I think that's, so many great things, and I think we're excited that you're letting us share with it. So as we populate the poll here, Brandon, I know you are very deep into the data side of things. So as you look at the poll and the results that are coming in today, how does it resonate with you?
So a couple of quick things. I mean, it's starting to get there. 57% is the second highest we've had so far in that category. That is a 5% increase on last week, which is even better. And then the other thing is, we've gone up every week for the last 4 weeks now on this. We may surpass it, which is really awesome. We were at 5% last week and 6% this week. 1% increase is nice to see because more and more people are getting more confident. So really nice to see that there's some confidence out there. And we're going to continue to work with those folks that are still in the not so hot frame to get you moving into these other categories as we continue to have these webinars. So hopefully we continue to spark some positive and unique ideas to help you feel a little bit more confident.
Perfectly stated. All right, with that, let's, as they say, let's play ball. So today we're going to walk through how Chloe and her team have knocked fundraising out of the park, because we love a good pun around here. How they've handled the ultimate year of the curveball. Brandon has some very insightful data analysis to cover, and I've asked our panelists here to stay on the end for about 10 to 15 minutes of question and answer. So throughout the entire conversation, please feel free to send in questions through the chat. We'll be compiling them in Go, so don't have to wait until the end to send them in. And one thing that we're excited about is actually Brett is our is a second-time speaker for us on this, where a few months back, we spoke about another professional sports affiliated organization, the Las Vegas Golden Knights Foundation. What's awesome is while they are both sports teams, there's some vast differences in terms of how each of the organizations has used the technology in their stories. And I think for me, at least, that's very exciting to show that regardless if you're in the same sector, on the other side of the country, there's still a lot of value. So with that, Brett, can you start us off by walking us through some of the different things that historically have worked pretty well for Chloe and her team?
Yeah. So usually every single year they do their signature event called Bricks and Ivy. Takes place in the spring and it kicks off the baseball season. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do that this year due to the pandemic, but what they have historically done with their fundraising with us is they've made it a responsibility to know what donors they have in the room for this Bricks and Ivy event. Back when they won the World Series in 2016, the following year, 2017, the Bricks and Ivy event to kick off that season, they had a ton of high-level executives as their donor base. So they knew they needed to tailor the event around that type of clientele and guest in attendance for that Bricks and Ivy event. And then following that, they had more of a junior level list of donors. So they had to tweak the 2018 event, 2019 event for those donors in the room. The majority of the fundraising they do is the classic fundraising that a lot of our charity partners do: a live auction, a paddle raise, a raffle, silent auction as well. Their fundraising goals always tweak when it comes to the donors they do have in the room, and that's why it's important to know who you have in attendance. Leverage the data that you're collecting year over year to make sure every year is a successful event.
And Chloe, I mean, going off of that, it sounds like you and your team spend a lot of, knowing your donors, understanding and how to cater to them is one of the cornerstones, of the overall fundraising game plan for you guys, it sounds like then?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it right on the head. That's one of our newest initiatives. Can you guys hear me? It says we're muted.
Nope, we can hear you.
No, you're perfect.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it's become a really big focus for us. I think just on a micro level, Brett talked about knowing our donors and being able to kind of fine tune the event. So for example, we were able to set the starting bids in our auction a little bit higher, knowing that the clientele in the room was, some of those C-suite folks. And then the next following years, adding more quantity-wise, but maybe a lower price point to engage some of those people who were still coming and maybe entertaining some guests. And that has really helped us, paired with the data that we get from GiveSmart and from the reports that we keep year over year, understanding who they are, what they look for, maybe some of their, life events that are happening. And really molding those offerings and our fundraising elements around those people. So we're still, it's still an opportunity for us to improve, but I think we're seeing the benefits of our focus on knowing our donors well.
No, that is fantastic to hear. And Brett, do you want to jump in, kind of what they did here with the golden raffle and what the difference between the two items we have up on the screen here are?
Yeah. So the golden raffle, golden paddle raffle, what they do is within GiveSmart, they have this item hidden. And what that does is it allows them to add a purchase into a Get shopping cart for this ticket. They handle the selling process of this at the event with volunteers coordinating, staff members coordinating the selling of these raffle tickets. Guests would go up to a specific staff member, purchase the ticket, and it'll be done through equipment, adding it directly into the guest shopping cart. So instead of doing it on ledgers or post-it notes and having to back enter everything, it's actually getting into the system right away. So it has accurate reporting that they can look later on as well. Other ways a lot of our charity partners do it would be the ledger way, which everything's back entered, or even the complete paperless way that we do have a feature within GiveSmart that guests can allow the purchases online, and then we can generate a random winner. But to me, one of the things I love the most about this is the winner of the golden paddle raffle. They have just a $0 hidden item on the site, and what they do is when the raffle winner is selected, they actually add this $0 item into that winner's account. So it shows up on their receipt, on their shopping cart, and then also for the Cubs on the back end, they can look to see who won that raffle. So 2 weeks after the event, if they still need to know who won the raffle, they have that in the reporting section of who the specific guest was. So they don't have to write it down and, hey, maybe that sheet of paper got lost. It's actually within the GiveSmart platform of who won that raffle.
No, that is awesome. And based upon the previous slide talking about the data, the accuracy of reporting, Chloe, I have the curiosity in me. What was the golden paddle raffle like? What did the winner get for this one?
Yeah, so we actually modeled this after one of the other events that we attended, and you pay $250 in our case for a chance to enter in the raffle, and the winner of the raffle gets a $10,000 credit to use in the live auction. So essentially, it incentivizes that person to bid on something that they might not have bid before. And we looked at the break-even points for how many raffle tickets we needed to sell, and it was fairly small in order for us to make that 10,000 based on the people that were in the room and knowing how many we anticipated were going to purchase. So in that regard, it kept someone bidding up on a live auction item, and it wasn't quite a loss to us either. It just was another way for us to generate more funds on an offering in the live auction that we maybe thought wouldn't go as well and needed a little love.
Yeah, that is also I like the ingenuity. I mean, talking about the data stuff, I've been doing the analysis on it, and that's a great way to, I think, hook people in and kind of make it a little bit more inclusive. So I like that. And one of the things we have a lot of people talk about is, I think especially a challenge in a virtual setting is over communicating. So Brett, can you kind of walk us through what exactly we're looking at and really, alongside Chloe, how the communication works at these events and making sure that donors are informed and they have the information they need?
Yeah, so I'll explain what we're actually looking at here. This is the history of text messaging for the specific client regarding an item he had an auto bid set at. So he had an auto bid on an item, which means a max bid was placed on an item he really wanted. As you can see at the top, he actually was sent a notification when he was outbid, when his max bid was outbid on that item. He was notified that he was outbid, which allows him to bid again. So instead of him being notified every single time somebody placed a bid against him and that he took the lead again, it actually only notifies them at the very end when that max bid was outbid. So instead of 50 text messages, he actually only received one regarding that. To me, messaging is the key regarding this. Being able to inform your donors and your guests of what's going on with the fundraising, closing warnings, and of course, the automated messaging regarding being outbid on items. It's engaging your guests during this time.
That's awesome. Speaking of engaging, this one I think was one of the fun ones we had in going over. So Chloe, can you talk a little bit about kind of what these wives baskets are? And it sounds like a great opportunity for families to get involved a little bit and for players to showcase their personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one that I love. It's a in-game fundraiser that we also extend past the actual game day that we showcase the baskets. But the gist of it is that we ask our wives or significant others or family members of our current active players to compile a basket of their favorite things. So some of it is, either their favorite movie or their favorite candy or their favorite, sports brand, anything of that nature. And it's kind of a peek into the personality of the players, which we know that our donors really love. All of our donors really are Cubs fans at heart, and they want to know more about the people on the field. So it's pretty low investment on our side. It's a fun way to engage the spouses and the families of some of our, I don't want to say assets because that's not quite the right word, but our team and the thing that people love. And then it allows us to get a high return on something that we didn't really have to put too much effort into either. So that's why this continues to be successful for us. And it really just provides another touch point for our brand and connection with a personal nature to those donors.
Hey, Chloe, I had a real quick question here on this, just in regards to the logistics.
Yeah.
A lot of times we get the question of, can this be done virtually? Obviously, people after a game are still bidding on these, and it's really a virtual element. How do you guys handle the pickup or delivery of these? Is it something where people, reach out to you to come get those? How have you guys handled that in the past?
Yeah, we will pull the end report after our auction has closed. And then if they haven't reached out already, we'll schedule a pickup time for them. I think what we do have as a good, incentive for them to drive out to pick it up rather than having us ship something that might be a big bulky cooler or, incur some of those higher shipping costs is our location. I think a lot of people do like coming to Wrigley and any excuse that they can to come. So, but it's not, it's been done before where we've had to ship it to Florida or anything like that. And I think those costs end up being fairly minimal compared to what you can do in a virtual space now.
And I'll step in too. I know this is specifically towards players with the Cubs, but it actually can be done with any organization. It could be instead of wives baskets and player baskets, it can be more board member baskets or honorees, or if it's a school, teacher baskets, a basket of their favorite items, or award recipients. So this is a unique fundraising element, campaign idea that can benefit all types of charity partners of ours. It's just not specifically tied to players and wives. It can be used universal.
No, Brett, I'm happy you mentioned that. And I think that trying to make sure, anything can be done universally with it. It sounds like that the wives baskets, Chloe, is a great way from an engagement standpoint, to bring players in. And obviously that's what the constituent base is interested in. But we have other organizations who have kind of a similar setup in terms of there's the Cubs Charities, but then you have players and you guys are obviously supporting their missions and things of that nature and treating them as ambassadors. So can you talk a little bit about, in your experience, how to properly engage these ambassadors and really make your entire community a part of, the fundraising efforts overall that's being taken place?
Yeah, absolutely. Our players are really engaged in our charitable efforts, and I think there's an inspiration when they join the Cubs, knowing that they can fulfill those, more charitable and community-based programs that they are interested in. So what we do, it really starts at having a conversation. We get to know the team well too, the personalities, understanding what makes them feel comfortable, listening to what they see as important, and then understanding why they're involved in the first place. So, when we get them to be ambassadors of our brand, we also partner that with supporting their own initiatives. And I think that goes a long way. It's kind of like a, mutual benefit, everyone wins type of situation. So while some of those mission elements don't quite align with our Cubs Charities mission, our overall goal is to make our community a stronger place and a stronger group. So they recognize that, and I think so long as your ambassadors feel that they're heard and they're empathized and they truly feel seen, then that's when a good partnership comes, and that's when you can see a lot of return on the programs that you're investing in and the programs that they want to invest in as well.
No, that's a great point. And I think, as a follow-up to that, I think one thing we've heard a lot of people say, especially over the past few months, I'm hesitant to ask. And so I think as it comes to, ambassadors and members of the own community, I mean, what advice, based upon the experiences that you guys have, would you give to people in terms of some ways to engage their community or ambassadors, or, if they are even hesitant to potentially ask people?
Yeah, I think it comes from understanding maybe some of the existing relationships that you have in your organization with the ambassador that you want to get on board. And making the ask, the most that they can say is no. I know it sounds like that's not a revelation, but all of this started, maybe 6 years back with our executive director just asking Anthony Rizzo, hey, what do you want to do? How do you see the better future looking like, and what can we do to support you? And it all goes back to understanding those motivators, asking those open-ended questions, and trying to pair what you have available to give them what they are hoping for and what their goals are. So I think, just rounding back, understanding the relationships that exist there, or the degrees of separation between someone in your org versus to that ambassador that you're looking at.
No, that is a great point. And, one of the reasons I ask it is, with all of this stuff, there's the balance between historical and recent based upon everything. So we thought a very appropriate nomenclature would be 2020, the year of the curveball. So talking about, some of the things that you guys have had to react to. And before we jump to this, just a reminder, if you do have questions, keep them flowing in. We're actively compiling everything for the end of the call here. So, as we talk about some of the things, Brett, over to you, it's kind of alongside Chloe, walk us through some of this more recent things and how specifically some of the adjustments have had to be made as a result of everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, I just want to actually start with Anthony Rizzo. If you go back kind of on the last slide, that is one of the players that the Cubs help out with. They actually had to do a transition to a virtual fundraiser for his cook-off for cancer. What they did for this, they tweaked it, and to me, it was a super unique idea. They actually sold virtual tickets through GiveSmart for a cooking class with Anthony that they hosted on Zoom. So they sold about 100 spots of this class and had a Zoom cooking class with Anthony. I thought it was a great way to kind of tweak where, hey, we can't have this in-person event, but we still want to engage our donors. They raised some funds along the way, and it was a fun experience for everybody involved. But Chloe, how I know with Bricks and Ivy being your signature event and it falling in line with kind of the heart of the shutdown in Chicago, how have you transitioned for this?
Yeah, before I go into that, I do want to stay on the Rizzo topic, and I think Brett highlights some really good points that the Rizzo Family Foundation, which is now its own freestanding foundation, has done with their event. Is it was on brand, and they really replicated the experience close to what your live event is. And so I think that's important to understand. Maybe what are the top 3 things that your donors associate with that live event or that program that you put on? And if you're considering going virtual, can you make good on those top 3 things that your donors associate with that? So transitioning to Bricks and Ivy, it was our 10th anniversary. We were planning to have it on the field for the first time. And we looked at the data, and we looked at how much sponsorship we had in the door versus what our expenses would have been. And going back to that topic I just brought up, is could we make good on the experience of Bricks and Ivy and what we've built over the past 9 years? And at that point, we didn't feel that we could sustain the quality and deliver on the expectations that our donors had supported for so long. So that was one of the reasons we didn't move forward with making it a virtual event. We found that we would likely retain more revenue with the sponsorships that we had in the door already. And then we also had some concerns of being a little tone deaf or insensitive with having an event of that nature amongst all the other things that were going on. So we considered all those elements and then made the disappointing but necessary decision to cancel the event altogether.
No, it's, I think you guys did a lot of research, and I think the comment you made, so we're getting stuff together over the past few days resonated with me about focusing on the revenue that you do have committed and bringing that in. I think that's great advice for everybody. And, one question that in every webinar we've gotten is people's question about donation requests and item requests and how to facilitate that. Chloe, so can you talk us through, obviously, you guys are in a unique position where you're affiliated with the Cubs, but you're your own charitable entity. So can you talk us through and give people maybe some advice who are struggling with how do I ask for donations, whether it's from a team, whether from a business, and kind of some of the trends that you guys are seeing at the moment?
Yeah, totally. We have a really strong in-kind donation program, and we have a lot of rules, I guess, around distributing those. For example, each organization can only get one donated item a year, and we do that because we understand the impact of each of these in-kind donations, especially of an MVP of a National League or a World Series MVP, and how much that can do for an organization in fundraising, because it's so strong. So we have become very efficient in managing that. We use a Donation X platform, but also manage in-house some of those requests and really take into consideration what information is on those applications. So our process starts with spring training and compiling all those donations while the team is in Arizona. And we use that inventory for the rest of the year. So I think there might be a notion of, you can go downstairs and get a baseball signed by Chris Bryant before a game, and that's just not the case. So we had to learn that the hard way. But that's how we maximize our inventory and can support all those donors. So I would say a little maybe trick of the trade is having a little bit of a pulse on what's happening with the roster. If you see someone that's a big name that gets traded, we'll likely start to move a lot of those autographed items out the door, so that it still has value for the recipients of those in-kind donations. And then another thing is we kind of like to section off, I would say, per month, how many we give of our top tier, our highest value autographed items. So towards the end of the year, or in the end of the baseball season around September or October, we might have leftover of the really highly coveted, jerseys or bats of those big name players, and we'll start distributing more of those. So I would say if you're looking to target a, Super Bowl champion or a Stanley Cup recent winner, look at their season and when those things might conclude, because you might have better luck getting those top ticket items closer to the end of the season or when bigger trades happen.
It's so helpful as we've had a few sports teams on, and we've had a few different webinars about getting sponsorships and donations from organizations. And, my background also being in the sports space, it's very consistent across the league. So the NFL, NHL, all those different teams have very similar processes where you want to be timing things right, and you also want to be asking for the right kinds of things. You don't go in just saying, I want to get an appearance and that's the only thing I'm interested in, because some players, like Chloe said earlier, may not be interested in doing that or not comfortable doing that. These are individuals who may not be as good at talking in the public and doing appearances, but they may be willing to sign something specifically for a cause that matters to them. So keep that in mind as you're reaching out, that these are, hot commodities. We'll talk about some of the data behind that, but also these are things that you have to have the right timing, but also the appropriate requests and follow their processes. It never hurts to have an ambassador in the organization, as we've talked about before. So if there is, someone who is a supporter of your cause that works for or works for a sponsor of, the Cubs or an organization like that, certainly do some digging and find that out, because that does change the odds and change the percentage chance that you're going to get something that's really going to make a difference. But we got to be mindful, as these are very popular people. But Brett, that's pretty much the same in college sports too, right, Brett?
Yep, that's pretty much the same in college as well. And like Chloe said, from all my knowledge regarding sports teams, professional and college, they always do the bulk signing of the memorabilia at the beginning of the season. So like Chloe said, it's not like you just go down and ask Chris Bryant for an autograph or to donate into an auction. They have an inventory that they keep accurate throughout the season. So keep that in mind if you are trying to get specific items from specific teams. college or pro.
And, you know, playing off of it's difficult to go downstairs and just get something, you know, with obviously right now, Chloe, with the team being in influx and all the things that's been taking place over the past few weeks and months, you know, I'm sure the team has a balance that they're trying to get in terms of, you know, we want to help the charitable side, but then from our corporate sponsors, you know, as well. So you could talk a little bit about, you know, ways that you try to engage or involve sponsors, you know, whether it's through the Bricks and Ivy or just some of the things maybe that you guys are doing lately to try and engage those people so that those corporate sponsorships and partnerships remain strong.
Yeah, that's certainly taking a big hit, and we've had to kind of prioritize what asks go all the way to the top of the chain for those players and what, you know, might just need to be a no for now. But I think the key with those sponsors is an answer of a no but. So if we can't get a Chris Bryant or an Anthony Rizzo appearance, given the current circumstances, what can we do? Can we get a video of them? Can we put a logo somewhere where we haven't had it before? And I think now's the time of creativity, but understanding that a lot of brands are cognizant about the charitable aspects in the current situation, in our current landscape. And I think the consumer is now being a lot more cognizant of how they're buying, what companies are buying from are doing in the community. And so that's where we have that unique positioning. And so that, I think, is a huge value add. So if you have any of those partnerships and sponsors, you know, showcasing those feel good moments and those heartstring moments where you can pair a sponsorship with that as some messaging, and to show that that's something that is important to all parties involved.
No, perfect. And speaking of messaging, you know, as we talk about, okay, adjustments and having to make things on the fly, you know, because the Bricks and Ivy unfortunately had to get canceled just due to timing and really, especially with the uniqueness of the team and the items, you know, Chloe, you guys have sat down and, you know, for example, here we see this with schools and different organizations with selling marquee names. You know, as you look at a season potentially where people can't come in the stadium, you know, whether it's this or other things, you know, what are you guys trying to do to really try and capture some of that revenue or still provide the same sort of experience for donors?
Yeah, we know that our 50-50 raffle, so our split the pot, and our video board messages are actually what brings in the bulk of our fundraising for our entire calendar year. And so not having fans is a huge hit to our biggest revenue generator. We have since repositioned the video board messages to, again, make good on an experience that we know our fans and our donors love, but maybe adjusting the price point to be empathetic with how many people have maybe lost jobs or don't have as much disposable income. But on that same note, understanding that because we're all virtual, we can get a lot more of these out the door. So we are not restricted by telecast or quantities of game time in between innings that we might be when we do have fans. So there are some positive outcomes of being able to more mass produce and layer the programs that we know sell really well. And then on the 50-50 note, we are really I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but we stars kind of aligned and we got our Illinois raffle license. So now we're able to sell across the state. So this is great news for us because again, before it used to be just a game day activation, and now we can start to message this to all of our fans across the state. So, you know, kind of bringing it up to 30,000 feet above, if you don't have a reach like the Cubs might, understanding what is limiting you and your more signature programs, and if there's a way to expand that past the maybe geographical borders that you once had.
No, and I have to ask you a question, Chloe, that we see all the time, and I have to admit I'm not that well versed on it, is as it comes to raffles, obviously each state is different in terms of the restrictions and legislation involved. But, you know, is it as simple as I Google how to get a raffle license, or for somebody who's maybe not as familiar and doesn't know how to navigate it? Obviously, we'll always recommend contacting, you know, a legal representative and all those things. But, you know, how complicated, in your opinion, was the process of getting the raffle license? Or from that experience, any sort of advice that you might have to somebody who's considering it but unsure, if they can handle all the hoops that might be involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually wish I had a little bit more information because my counterpart manages our programs. But knowing how long she had worked and how many people she went through, it was probably about a 1.5 year process to get that full Illinois state raffle license. It's fairly easy to renew, I know, but as far as who the best contact is, I can ask my counterpart and reshare that information so you can distribute it to these folks who are maybe considering doing a raffle that's expanded past the city.
And I'll kind of step in on that as well. I recommend contacting the gaming commission in the state. They'll answer your question. They'll start the process with you. Every state's different. Like Pat said, some are easier to get, some are more difficult. So the 1.5 years it took the Cubs in Illinois could be much easier and quicker in Kentucky. If you have questions or not regarding raffles, definitely quick Google search for the gaming commission in your state, and they'll be more than happy to kind of put you on the correct path.
Perfectly stated. And then kind of a fun thing to wrap up, some things you guys have been doing lately. Chloe, can you talk through, what we see here, Clark the mascot, doing in kind of ways that you guys have tried to inform people and really stay active with some of the programs you have going on at the moment?
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is a graduation caravan parade that I'm sure many of you have seen on social media. So we loved that idea and we took it to bring to our RBI scholars, which is Reviving Baseball in Inner Cities, those graduating seniors, as well as the graduating seniors from our Cubs Scholars program, which is a scholarship and education and mentorship program that we have in-house. So we had 40 to 60 cars line up and drive all around the city. I was part of one of the days that we did it, and it was exhausting because I was so amped up on positive energy. Some of the kids were crying, some of them were so overwhelmed, but it was a good way for us to also relay back to our donors and show the impacts of their dollars in the space of our current events. So again, going back to that, not wanting to feel tone deaf, which I'm sure a lot of fundraisers are feeling that, we don't want to be insensitive. There are a lot of pertinent needs right now, but framing your programs that don't stop during a pandemic in the landscape and in the lens of what's happening now. So this was an impactful moment for us and was funded directly by the revenue that we brought in through our fundraising programs and events.
No, that is beautifully stated. And I think, keeping people abreast of what's happening and beautiful thing about leveraging social is similar to what you've mentioned with the video messaging is it gives you a chance to kind of increase your audience and things like that. So a fun way. And Chloe and Brett will give you a little bit of a break. As Brandon, I know you have some different data insights that we want to jump into because I think it's some interesting findings that you had.
Awesome. So our first slide here, we just wanted to share a little bit of what we've been seeing as everything's been going on, kind of a bright spot and assuring everyone you really can do this. So since our last staffed event, and we haven't had on-site staff since mid-March, over $95 million has been raised through GiveSmart, and that's through almost 1,800 different organizations, almost 2,400 different fundraising campaigns. And that impact is really what we're most excited about, being able to make a difference in everything going on. So you can see here the trend is continuing even into the summer months, which is what usually might not happen in the past, as everyone maybe was taking a little bit of a break in the summer. So really nice to see here week over week a positive trend in fundraising, and then we can jump into the next one. Talking about just what's working. So we released this analysis as part of our silent auction study back in February based off real data. We did a deep dive into categories, into regions, and really it's an extensive research piece that'll help guide the way on different silent auction items. But what I wanted to call out here, and obviously this is very pertinent to the conversation we're having today, is if you look at the average return on fair market value, that's the third column. you can see autographed items have a great return. So 241%, the highest return compared to anything else. So their fair market value, for instance, maybe $100, but that $100 item is going for $240 often because of that perceived value behind something like that. It's harder to put a ticket on that for someone to say, okay, I know this is a $100 item all the way. But what's really cool is, that's continuing to be popular. 8.5, almost 8.5 bids per item means people are continuing to compete on those things. We want to drive competition in auctions. That's what's working. So I wanted to point that out today, as well as look at some of the other categories that continue to perform well. So we're seeing a continued performance in the sports and tickets, whether that's game used items. Tickets, obviously, with games not going on, you have to have some caveats around those, maybe focus on 2021 and work with your teams when they are making donations. But on the sports items, there's also golf clubs, there's also memorabilia, there's also other things that are not autographed items, but game worn type things that I know Chloe and I were talking earlier, very popular even for the teams to try and get the game worn items, as those are authenticated by the teams and distributed. So something to focus on there. And then look at what you're able to do based off of starting bids. So the average starting bid for something like a golf outing is significantly higher than maybe a package that's built for kids. And yeah, you're going to want to get pieced at different donors, but if we're trying to look for bigger ticket items, golf packages, autographed items, and travel and experiences, even local experiences, do resonate at a higher dollar value, which makes sense because they have a higher fair market value oftentimes as well. So this is just one example of the data kind of telling us a story, and we are auditing this right now as we continue to run virtual auctions, and we're seeing a trend that continues to be consistent with the numbers we're seeing here. So hopefully this guides some decisions. There are some items on here that have low numbers that I would avoid, but I'm not going to call them out because every dollar counts, and we still want to fundraise as often as we can. And then finally, it's great to have all of our data, but look at your own data. So I pulled this from the Bricks and Ivy ball last year, and this is probably very familiar to Chloe. This is something that anyone using the GiveSmart platform or any technology should be able to look at and see, but look at the number of bids per an item. So Cub Scout for a day, POTUS is not president for the day. I did look that up. That was a signed baseball by former presidents, but named cleverly. But as you look here, the number of bids are just really high for these items. So we know that these were very popular. But then if you look at the other side, you also have items that were very popular based on value. So the Be Like Baez package had a 1,700% value compared to its fair market value. That's huge. That means that thing really was popular. So look for those kinds of things as you run your events and run your past events, because and then you should try and find things that are similar. Obviously, 67 people bid on the Cub Scout for a day, but only one person won, or 67 bids replaced. So it's something definitely to look at as you're looking at data, and I'm happy to guide people in that regard, but the silent auction study and your own data is really going to be the best resource for that.
Perfect. I love the element of people being able to do it themselves that you mentioned there. And before we run into the question and answer section, just a reminder about our upcoming webinars that we have 2 next week, with Wednesday being a discussion about hybrid fundraisers, that we have some fantastic guest speakers joining us. And then next week's Outside the Room episode will feature Place of Hope, an organization based out of Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, talking about the multiple campaigns they've been running with great success, in particular over the past few 90 days. And with that, I will do my best to channel my inner live auctioneer and go speed round with the questions. So we're going to get to as many as can, but fear not, as anything that we don't get to cover today, our team will follow up in the materials after the fact. So Chloe, first question to you. We had a few people ask about the golden raffle. So could you kind of walk us through one more time where the raffle ticket was $250, and then if somebody did win it, I believe you had said $10,000 was the price. So what if they won an auction item for potentially, let's say, $8,000? Do they get still a $2,000 credit, or is it, you know, hey, just for one item and we're assuming it's going to be a higher ticket?
Yeah, great question. We put in some rules there to protect against some of those, and a little bit of a risky move for us to assume that things were going to go over 10,000. So maybe understanding scaling that winning credit amount to what you feel comfortable giving in your auction. And for us, we limited it to one item only, so you can't disperse it amongst, you know, several items. And if anything goes for under that 10,000, then that's just unused credit. And we didn't seem to get any pushback from that. So
that's good. No, that's just, I think more than anything, I mean, a common theme of doing the research ahead of time and knowing that price points might be in advance is a good one. Another question, Chloe, for you is, what advice do you have for audience development in terms of trying to get more eyeballs, I believe, for a first-time virtual fundraiser at an organization who hasn't had a live event in, you know, say a few years? So if they have to do it virtually, you know, maybe some creative ways to try and increase exposure and awareness for the efforts that they're putting forth.
Yeah, I think that it, again, all goes back to understanding your donor base. So if you're trying to think of something that's on brand with your element, let's say you are supporting scholarships and mentorships for children, but you haven't done an event before, getting some real-time feedback, or I'm sorry, some videos or footage of the programs that you impact and those people that you are raising money for. I think understanding the root of why you're asking people to go to your event or your virtual event is really the driving factor that gets people in the door and making something unique. I think we are lucky in that we have strong marketing channels, but starting to develop that now and starting to find those people that can amplify your message, whether that's someone that's part of different boards or, you know, has a strong place in the fundraising community or in the business community, anyone that you can ask to extend to their network to get them to see what you're doing virtually is key. But I think where I've seen the most compelling messaging from some of our partners is, you know, having a thank you video from some of those scholarship recipients, or showing the college student getting their acceptance letter and their reaction to that. So showing what impact you have to drive more people to become engaged.
That is fantastic advice. You should maybe consider consulting on the side. Brandon, a question to you. Know you have some experience in regards to in-kind donations. Is it historically where the programs are only for the benefit of kind of the local area? So I guess in the Cubs example, would it only be for the benefit of Chicago families?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The luxury of any teams is their fan base is not restricted to just the local area. Sometimes their mission is, so maybe the Cubs are supporting just local organizations, but in-kind donations and those requests really, you know, are not restricted to just the communities. Each team probably has some, you know, basis for, you know, how many they're going to give out of state versus in state. But, you know, Chloe, does that kind of coincide for you guys of, you know, you don't have to be in the Chicago area to get an in-kind donation from the Chicago Cubs?
Yeah, Brandon, you're correct. We distribute all across the country. We distribute 10,000 items a year to anyone. I think we've done a few international, just given some of our players' affiliations in other countries. But you can probably find a fan anywhere. So that works to the benefit of a lot of in-kind sports memorabilia.
Just to add, sometimes that sorry, Patrick, just one quick thing. Sometimes that out of ordinary thing. So maybe if you're in Pittsburgh and you have a unique item from a different team that's not in the area, that might resonate a little bit more if you know your fan base has a few fans from that other team in a different area. So think about maybe reaching outside of the teams right next door.
People are willing to give anywhere. I think that's a great reminder. Brett, a question to you. Interesting to see in the data there that travel and experiences are doing well. In your experience working with customers, how worried are people about cancellation of events or attending at events prohibited, in regards to, some of those auction offerings?
Yeah, so it is still successful, and to me historically, the experiences are to me the better item when it comes to auctions, because the fair market value, as Brandon went over earlier, usually is higher off. Your return is better, and from a winner perspective, it's that memory of that item that you're experiencing. So people are still interested in purchasing those. Now, the key to handle that is with that donor, whoever donated that item, figuring out, okay, is there a cancellation fee? Are we going to be able to refund the guest if for some reason it had a expiration date of October 2020, but hey, maybe they didn't open up as a restaurant, or due to the pandemic, the COVID, that they had to adjust, and maybe they're extending it another year. So I think putting that information, getting as much info from that donor regarding that item before you throw that into your auction is key. Letting the people know, hey, okay, there's a no cancellation policy. You will be refunded if for some reason it's canceled from the donor side of it. So putting those restrictions and that information up front regarding that item is key, because ideally you're not going to have as many questions that come into play when people are interested in wanting to donate on the item. So as much information as you can get ahead of time before you add that item to your auction is very, very important. And nowadays, with all this, we're learning that a lot of restaurants and companies that are teams that are, hey, we'll make exceptions, and if we have to push it another year, we'll make it work, or we can do a refund.
Thanks, it's a great comment. I think empathy and understanding of the clear communication is popped up a few times. A question, I guess, for either B Squared, either one of you. I think it's a very good one. We've asked donors to double up next year if events are canceled, so that we can replace this year's items and potentially get a different item for next year's auction. Excuse me. Should we state this to reassure people? They're concerned about scaring people off. So, in terms of kind of following up, Brett, on the comment you made about items, as people examine how to do it and what's possible, and especially being cognizant of not scaring people off, what sort of things have you seen people do, or recommendations might you have in that regard?
Oh, yep, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so regarding the items and doubling up for the next year, or doing multiple fundraising, and potentially scaring off donors, or giving items multiple times a year. A lot of companies put away, kind of like what the in-kind auctions with the Cubs do, restaurants do as well, regarding their gift certificates to a restaurant. So they put that aside ahead of time, so they already have that built out for the yearly budget regarding how much they can give per year to specific organizations. So it shouldn't scare off donors regarding, hey, do you want to donate an item for this event, and then 6 months from now another one, or doubling up, doing two in 2021, because they should have that set aside for it. And if not, to me, the biggest thing is ask. You can't go wrong with asking. Ask donors, ask these local companies, reach out, call them. They're willing to help. Even with everything going on now, they want to give to your cause. So it doesn't hurt to ask. Worst thing you can say, hey, no, we can't do that right now. Okay, maybe you reach out in a year. So don't be hesitant to actually pick up the phone and call donors, restaurants, getting those items, even if it is doubling up year after year.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Brett, I mean, that's an excellent point. And, think of it also as an opportunity to do something now and something later, also with a virtual option, online auctions, online raffles, or online games of chance, opportunity drawings, whatever you want to call them. Have the opportunity for people to support you now when they can, so you can still be bringing in some of the revenue you were hoping for from those donated items. And if it is something that you can put some caveats in, so people are clear and understanding of, if it's a travel package or it's a ticket package or anything, that aspect, make sure people know that there's an extension on it, or some freedoms. If you reach out to a donor who has tickets and they have season tickets to the Cubs, well, make sure that they're flexible in allowing people to, maybe use those next season. Communicate that openly, and all that.
Perfectly stated. Chloe, the final question to you, as you guys look towards potentially 2021 and kind of some of the plans and not knowing with the uncertainty of everything happening, how are you examining potential sponsor partnerships or engaging with sponsors with the uncertainty that the region might be facing, a second stay-at-home order or anything like that, in terms of potentially as you look at the Bricks and Ivy Ball in 2021 or other plans in that regard?
Sorry, that was breaking up a little bit. I think the question was how we continue to engage with our sponsors and partners in an uncertain time.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great. I heard the points that I needed to hear, I think. It's still a work in progress. I think we're really having constant talks. We have people that's their sole responsibility right now is to be that mediator, to be that representative and the voice for those partnerships. A lot of what we're exploring is using things, for example, the stands, using the stands in a way that we haven't had the opportunity to do before because of the lack of fans. So I think we're doing some branding in the stands. I think we can do some other opportunities on the field, around the ballpark, with those partners, but a lot of it is kind of like make good. And so association with what we're doing as a nonprofit now has been carrying a lot of weight and a lot of leverage with sustaining those partnerships for our organization, and keeping our strong position in the market as a fundraising group. And I think, again, understanding what was promised with your partners and trying your best to make good on what you can. But I think that being creative in a space that is allowing us to be creative is the most exciting part of this. I think, we had a brainstorming session a little bit ago in May, and there were some really awesome ideas that came out of those few weeks. So I would advise maybe doing that. When's the last time that we were able to just sit down and think about, okay, if we had nothing in person, or if we could start all over with our fundraising, what would we do? And okay, who is in our Rolodex with our sponsors now? How can we pair some of the things that we know that they like to make good with some of these brainstorming ideas? So I think let the creativity flow and then match your partners with some of those big ideas that you have.
That is perfectly stated, and a great inspiration note to end on. And really that flew by. And just quick final note that at the end of the call, you're going to see a survey that we please would ask you to take a minute just to fill out and give us your feedback, as our goal is to really have you listening shape the conversations and the content. So please give us your feedback so we can make sure to implement that moving forward. And with that, Chloe, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all the different inspiration and advice from what your experience has given us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm very humbled to be part of this platform, and I think you guys are doing a great job in sharing knowledge with this community. I'm just constantly amazed by the creativity of this nonprofit community, and I've seen firsthand the resilience of all those involved in this important work. So I think that will continue as we navigate through these times. And I know a lot of people on the call might not have the same well-known brand as Cubs Charities, but there are a lot of patterns and similarities. So I hope what I've shared today will inspire and help your team secure important funding for your work.
No, I think it definitely will. And with that, Brett and Brandon as well, thank you to each of you for sharing your insights and expertise with us as well.
Thanks, Patrick. Hope everyone got some good stuff.
And with that, our final thank you is to each of you for listening here today. We are in your corner, and similar to exactly what Chloe said, we're inspired by what we're seeing, and we know that you too can emulate the success that so many organizations are having. And we look forward to continuing to share these stories and hopefully moving more of you into the We May Surpass It poll that we saw at the beginning. So with that, thank you one more time and have a great rest of the day.